This video begins at the top of page 56 thereabouts. It goes up to and including page 60. And then it goes up to and including page 65. I asked, in regard to Aryeh Kaplan's commentary on the Sefer Yetzirah, feel free to discuss this in terms of other Kabbalistic texts. Don't make up fanciful, verbose answers. Please take the following textual material. Extract all of the Hebrew/Kabbalistic terms and define them. Take all of the mentioned biblical quotes, search and provide the KJV quotes and provide a brief contextual explanation of each of the quotes, 2 or 3 sentences. If Talmudic/Zoharic or other Kabbalistic quotes are referenced, please go ahead and find those quotes also. Here are the responses. Hebrew/Kabbalistic terms. Sufa. Literally storm, whirlwind, or tempest. Kaplan notes traditions connecting Sufa with Saf, and or limit, suggesting a force carrying consciousness beyond ordinary boundaries into transcendence. Saadia Jayan interprets it more literally as a whirlwind or dust devil. Saf and boundary, or limit. In Kabbalistic literature it is often contrasted with the infinite, Ein Sof. Sephirah/Sephirot, the 10 divine emanations or modalities through which God interacts with creation. The Sephirot are not independent beings but channels or attributes through which divine influence is manifest. Atzilut. Emanation. The highest of the 4 worlds. The realm most closely associated with the Sephirot themselves. Biriat. Creation. The second world. Often associated with the divine throne, Kais HaKavod. Yetzirah. Formation. The third world. Traditionally associated with angels and spiritual forms. Asiyah. Action or making. Although not explicitly discussed in the excerpt, it is implied by the standard 4 worlds doctrine. It is the lowest world, associated with physical reality. Keter. Crown. The highest Sephirah. Often associated with divine will and primordial causality. Malkut. Kingship. The lowest Sephirah. The point through which divine influence enters the lower worlds. Ein Sof. Although not named directly in the excerpt, Kaplan's discussion of God's absolute transcendence reflects this concept. Literally without end. The infinite divine reality beyond all description and attributes. Yetzer Tov. The good inclination. The inner tendency toward righteousness and obedience to God. Yetzer Hara. The evil inclination. The inclination toward selfishness, sin, and rebellion. In rabbinic thought it is not identical to Satan, it is an internal impulse. Biblical quotations. Ezekiel 1:26, KJV. And above the firmament that was over their heads was the likeness of a throne, as the appearance of a sapphire stone, and upon the likeness of the throne was the likeness as the appearance of a man above upon it. This verse is part of Ezekiel's opening vision of the divine chariot, Merkava. Kabbalists regard it as one of the foundational texts for mystical contemplation. The throne is commonly associated with Biriat, while the appearance of a man is interpreted as the anthropomorphic arrangement of the Sephirot and Atzilut. Isaiah 55:9, KJV. The excerpt alludes to the phrase as the heavens are higher than the earth. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. Context. Isaiah emphasizes the immeasurable difference between divine wisdom and human understanding. Kaplan employs the verse to illustrate the spiritual distance between God and man before considering how creation bridges that distance. Rabbinic and Midrashic references. Angels have no Yetzer Hara. A commonly cited source is Babylonian Talmud, Shabbat 8:9a. When Moses ascends Sinai, the ministering angels argue against giving the Torah to humanity. Moses responds that the Torah addresses temptation, work, and moral struggle conditions that angels do not experience. Relevant idea. The Torah speaks of honoring parents, resisting evil impulses, and other matters irrelevant to angels. Context. The rabbinic conclusion is that angels lack the internal conflict characteristic of human beings. One angel cannot perform two missions. Genesis Rabbah 50:2. A common wording. One angel does not perform two missions. Context. The Midrash explains why different angels appeared to Abraham and Lot. Each angel has a distinct function and mission. Kaplan uses this teaching philosophically. Spiritual entities are defined by their function rather than by spatial separation. Zoharic reference. Kaplan cites the famous idea to turn darkness into light. Zohar. The expression appears repeatedly in the Zohar in various forms, especially to transform darkness into light. A notable example occurs in the Zohar. Context. The Zohar teaches that the highest spiritual achievement is not merely avoiding evil but transforming darkness itself into light and bitterness into sweetness. Human beings in the physical world uniquely possess this capacity because good and evil coexist within them. Sefer Yetzirah reference. Their end is embedded in their beginning, and their beginning in their end. Hebrew. Context. This is one of the most famous statements in Sefer Yetzirah, 1:7 according to Kaplan's numbering. Kabbalists generally interpret it as expressing the circular nature of divine emanation, the interdependence of Keter and Malkut, the unity underlying apparent opposites, and the principle that the highest and lowest levels are ultimately linked. The idea is developed extensively in the writings of Isaac Luria, Moses Cordovero, and later Hasidic literature, where Malkut becomes the gateway back toward Keter. Principal Kabbalistic theme of the passage. Kaplan is drawing together three related doctrines. 1. The four worlds Atzilut, Biriat, Yetzirah, and Asiyah. 2. The Sephirotic circle Keter and Malkut are opposites yet interconnected. 3. The purpose of physical creation. Only in a physical world can opposites coexist, good and evil, spirit and matter, allowing humanity to fulfill the Zoharic task of transforming darkness into light. Interpretation is well grounded in classical Kabbalah and is especially consistent with the teachings of Sefer Yetzirah, the Zohar, Cordovero, and Lurianic Kabbalah. Here is a bunch more stuff. Malkut. Kingship. The final Sephirah through which divine influence enters the created worlds. Atzilut. Emanation. Highest of the four worlds. Biriat. Creation. The world associated with the divine throne. Yetzirah. Formation. The world associated with angels and spiritual forms. Divine name YHVH. The Tetragrammaton. Kaplan discusses the classic Kabbalistic interpretation. Apex of Yud equals Keter. Yud equals Chakmah. First Het equals Bina. Vav equals 6 Middot, Chesed through Yesod. Final Het equals Malkut. This interpretation appears in numerous Kabbalistic texts, including the Zohar and later Lurianic writings. Yud, the smallest Hebrew letter, often associated with Chakmah. Het, associated here with Bina and Malkut. Vav, numerical value 6, associated with the 6 middle Sephirot. Gotchlet, burning coal. Abulafia notes its gematria equals that of Emet. Emet, truth. Gematria equals 441. A classical rabbinic and Kabbalistic symbol of completeness because it spans the alphabet from Aleph to Taf. Aleph, first Hebrew letter. Mem, middle letter of the alphabet in the traditional symbolism discussed here. Taf, last Hebrew letter. Ada, thou, used in Jewish prayer when directly addressing God. Eshad, one, often denotes numerical oneness. Yachid, singular, unique. Kaplan emphasizes that Yachid indicates absolute uniqueness beyond even numerical categorization. Yetzer Hara, evil inclination. Torah, the divine teaching, especially the 5 books of Moses. Biblical quotations. Daniel 12:6. KJV. And one said to the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, how long shall it be to the end of these wonders? Context. Daniel is witnessing a prophetic vision concerning the end of days. Kaplan cites it to illustrate the rabbinic idea that angels possessed knowledge limited to their assigned sphere and therefore may inquire of one another. Isaiah 6:2. KJV. Above it stood the seraphims, each one had 6 wings, with twain he covered his face, and with twain he covered his feet, and with twain he did fly. Context. Isaiah's vision of God's heavenly throne. Kaplan focuses on the phrase stood, reflecting the rabbinic notion that angels occupy fixed spiritual stations and do not advance as humans can. Zechariah 3:7. KJV. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, if thou wilt walk in my ways, and if thou wilt keep my charge, then thou shalt also judge my house, and shalt also keep my courts, and I will give thee places to walk among these that stand by. Context. God addresses Joshua the high priest. Rabbinic commentators often contrast the angels who stand with human beings who walk, meaning that humans can ascend spiritually. Genesis 28:12. KJV. And he dreamed, and behold a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven, and behold the angels of God ascending and descending on it. Context. Jacob's dream at Bethel. Kaplan interprets the ladder as symbolizing the connection between earthly action and spiritual ascent, a theme common in both Kabbalah and Midrash. Ecclesiastes 4:8. KJV. There is one alone, and there is not a second, yet he hath neither child nor brother, yet is there no end of all his labor. Context. In its plain sense, Solomon describes the tragedy of a solitary man consumed by labor. Kabbalists and philosophers frequently borrow the phrase "there is one and not a second" as language expressing divine uniqueness. Zoharic references. Flame and coal. Kaplan cites a famous Zoharic passage. Zohar 2:5-1a, paraphrased. If one wishes to know the mystery of unity, let him observe a flame rising from a coal. The Zohar then describes the visible and hidden levels of the flame as symbols of spiritual realities. Context. The Zohar uses the flame-coal relationship to explain how distinct levels remain united. Kaplan employs it to explain the unity of the Sephirot and the relationship between spiritual and physical existence. Elijah's prayer regarding the Sephirot. Kaplan's quotation. You bind them, and you unify them. This derives from the famous opening of the Tikkun Zohar known as Patach Eliyahu. Aramaic. Translation. You are he who binds them and unifies them. Context. The passage describes the Sephirot as unified expressions of divine action rather than independent entities. Rabbinic references. Angels limited to one mission. Genesis Rabbah 50:2. Translation. One angel does not perform two missions. Context. The Midrash explains why different angels appeared to Abraham and Lot. Kaplan extends the idea philosophically. Spiritual entities are defined by their function. Kabbalistic figures mentioned. Abraham Abulafia. c. 1240–1291. Founder of Prophetic Kabbalah. Known for meditation involving Hebrew letters, divine names, breathing techniques, and gematria. Joseph Jacadala. 1248–1325. Author of the influential Kabbalistic work Sha'arei Orah, Gates of Light. A student of Abulafia who later developed a more theosophical approach. Particularly important Kabbalistic theme. The central idea of this passage is not merely that the Sephirot form a hierarchy, but that physical reality makes spiritual integration possible. Kaplan is drawing on three classical doctrines. The Midrashic principle that angels are fixed and limited. The Zoharic image of the flame united with a coal. The Sefer Yetzirah teaching that their end is embedded in their beginning. His conclusion is that physical existence allows opposites and diverse spiritual forces to become unified in a way impossible on a purely spiritual plane. This is a standard theme in the Zohar, Tikkun Zohar, the writings of Rabbi Moses Cordovero, and later Lurianic Kabbalah, and is not unique to Kaplan's interpretation. Alrighty. That brings everything up to and including page 65.